brief introduction to scientific background of regenerating tissue with coherent multi-radiance therapy. The common misconception in allopathic medicine is that body is essentially a machine that inevitably breaks down with age, with wear and tear, and so on. So if we'll take, for example, knee osteoarthritis, when you first got the symptoms, you are told to take medication to suppress inflammation, to suppress pain. Obviously, medication does nothing for addressing the cause of the problem. So as a result, the condition continues to deteriorate. Cartilage, the bone, the tendons, the whole joint continues to deteriorate until eventually the damage is actually irreversible, and you're told to replace the knee with a titanium, for example. A procedure not only very expensive, but it also full of negative side effects, and there is no guarantee that actually the condition will improve. But is it so? Is it really that the body inevitably breaks down? This is a very interesting experiment I found in literature published in the Journal of Rheumatology. A group of researchers followed for 20 years 500 people. So this in the black dots, these are so-called community controls. So during this 20-year period, they gradually developed a disability, which is the knee osteoarthritis. And at the same time, they also followed 500 long-distance runners. This is the white circles. So these people routinely, practically every week, they run for long distances. So one would expect, if body is indeed like a machine which is inevitably breaks down, that these people, long-distance runners, will have much worse condition of their knees. But in reality, what's happening is that the gradual development of disability is much slower in the runners. And they would achieve the same level of disability 12 years later. So what it means is that despite this increased load on the knee, on the joints, on the cartilage, the body is still capable to meet that load and actually prolong the health. And this is because all of life, all forms of life, are continuously regenerating themselves, because there's a fundamental principle of healing, of medicine, of life, that life is a regenerative process. Every second, every hour, every day, all the cells of our body are constantly updating and regenerating. So in coMra therapy, the approach is aligned. Our approach is aligned with this concept. We are providing support to the innate intelligence of the body, or the healer within. So in coMra therapy, there are 4 different radiances. There is ultrasound, magnetic field, infrared laser, and color LEDs. These 4 different radiances support the fundamental cellular processes. So during the first webinar, I talked very briefly about how we can provide energetic stimulus using laser and magnetic field. So let's talk about how we can provide a message to the body, a regenerative message. We all know that emotions, especially strong, negative, suppressed emotions, exert enormous influence on the physiology. In fact, the majority of diseases at their core, at the initial cause, would have some sort of emotional disbalance. This is the dis-ease. It begins with the emotional status. And then it is expressed over the time through the neuroendocrine system in physiology. But color is an alternative way how we can talk, in a sense. We can talk to the body to provide a message using color. Just to give you an example, what does it mean using color? Cells, any cell of the body, requires messaging. In other words, Cell constantly absorbs the environment, and once it receives a signal, it will enact certain response. So in this experiment, stem cells, neural stem cells, were grown in vitro in a petri dish for 7 days. In control group, the cells were grown without addition of any messaging. So you can see the cells remained in its dormant state. In the second group, to the petri dish, they added growth factors. These are special chemical messages that send the message that these cells need to mature, grow, and differentiate. And through this, they create these long, tentacle-like that will form in the future neural networks. But in the third group, they, instead of adding chemical factors, growth factors, they added near-infrared light. So it was only one application of light, and cell can receive the message first of all and interpret it, thus activating a certain steps to grow and mature. Why this is important is that with light, we can provide a universal message to any type of cell, be it a skin, be it a bone, neural stem cell, and so on. It is a true universal message, and the particular changes in the physiology will depend on the current status of these cells. So in coMra therapy, we apply not a single color, but 3 colors in sequence. That particular sequence provides a universal message of regeneration. So when we'll talk about wound healing in the following presentation, you will see how important it is to provide such a message to damaged tissue. The third aspect, so first we had energy, second we're providing messaging, and the third aspect of coherent multi-resonance therapy is enhancing metabolic processes in the cells using ultrasound. Ultrasound essentially is a pressure wave. It is like a train of low and high pressure that goes through the tissue like a pulsing. As this train goes through the tissue, it activates several very important processes. At the most lower level, we stimulate enzyme activity. So this blue blob is actually an enzyme. It's a small factory that takes in raw material, combines them, and outputs the final product. So by providing this very gentle mechanical pulsing, we increase the transport of this process. But on a bigger scale, on microscopic level, ultrasound induces or stimulates coherent function, not of just one cell, but of millions and millions of cells that are disorganized in the diseased tissue. So we provide a common stimulus pulsing to a group of cells, be it an organ or a damaged tissue. So altogether with ultrasound, we stimulate coherent function of the living tissue. To show an example of how this ultrasound works, this is an experiment done in experimental conditions in vitro. In the control group, they induced formation of thrombs, and as you can see, during 2 hours, there was no change in the amount of the thrombin. When experimenters added a tissue plasminogen activator, it's a special enzyme that naturally dissolves the blood thrombs. So as you can see, there's a gradual dissolution, fibrinolysis. But when we add ultrasound, in addition to this enzyme, we observe up to 4 times increase of the speed of enzymatic dissolution. So when Dr. Pena will talk about his case of eye hemorrhage, very nice illustration to this process. Okay, so we looked at the three different processes, how we can provide energy, messaging, and metabolic stimulation to the diseased tissue using four different radiances. But this research began many years ago with individual radiances, with low-level lasers, with magnetic field, color, and ultrasound. But rather than trying to list and talk about all this large body of research, I put together a research library at this address, Cite You Like website. It is a publicly accessible website. And there you can read the papers, read at least the abstracts of selection, clinical trials and experiments on regeneration of skin, muscle, tendons, cartilage, bone, and nervous system. It's a very big library, so you're welcome to study those papers.